What's up, guys? This is Chris, and welcome to the first episode of my very first Kerbal Space Program series, in which we will be going to the Kerbal equivalent of Mars, also known as Duna. So let's get to it. The project I've designed for this mission is going to have three main parts. So the one I'm launching right now is the Duna ferry, and that'll take us into solar orbit, and then partially towards an encounter with Duna. Once it runs out of fuel, I'm going to detach it, and then the main ship, which I'll launch next, will carry the lander the rest of the way to Duna orbit. Once we're in orbit around Duna, the lander will detach from the main craft and make its way to the surface of Duna with two Kerbals, I think, where the Kerbals will do all sorts of experiments for the better of Kerbal kind. Oh yeah, and they'll also be rescuing a Kerbal accidentally stranded there a few months ago, which for him is going to be a couple years now, I think. I think he's been sitting on the surface for like 4 years by himself. I mean, that's got to be fun, right? After they finish their rescue mission and experiments, the Kerbals are going to ascend back into orbit in the lander and rendezvous with the main ship, and that's going to take them back to Kerbin. So after I set up this mission and started going through it, everything was going smooth and it was working exactly how I designed everything, but then I realized that when we pick up the stranded Kerbal on Duna and start heading back, we're going to have too many Kerbals to go back to Kerbin in the lander, because that's what I'm going to use to land the Kerbals back to Kerbin. They're going to come into orbit, and then the main ship will be out of fuel, so I'm going to have to send them down with parachutes on the lander. But it only fits, I think it only fits 2 or 3 Kerbals, and I'm going to have more than that. So I'm going to have to figure out a way to get around that once I come to it. Okay, so you probably just saw the way that my whole rocket just fell apart there. And after running a couple tests on it, I figured out that the reason it was doing that was because of a staging issue with one of those outer stage of boosters, where they would kind of, as they'd go out, like they'd just fall down. When they were staged, they wouldn't go out, so they'd crash into other rockets and blow the whole thing up. So after fixing it, I was able to get the rocket into orbit. So now that I've gotten past all the issues with launching this rocket, I'm going to send it over to the Duna ferry to rendezvous and refuel it. This is going to be my refueling station for everything else that I launch. I think I might have said earlier that I was going to launch the actual main ship and the lander next, and I decided to just do it I decided to do the fuel tank first. So that way I can, actually I don't really know, I just kind of decided to do it this way instead. That way there's kind of already some stuff in space and the fuel tank's already there. Because in past attempts at this mission before I recorded it, that was kind of the hardest part, for whatever reason, was getting this thing set up. I think it's just the way that, how much fuel each thing has to get into space, which is why I'm refueling them. Because if I didn't refuel them and just kind of had them meet up and go, there'd be no way that they'd be able to make it. So it requires this refueling station to get there. So for the rest of the video, we're going to get this thing into orbit, and I'm having the one mod that I've used for this entire video, that's it, or this entire series really, is going to be using the one mod, and then the rest of it will be manual, and the mod is MechJeb. So basically, MechJeb is an autopilot mod that can do takeoffs, landings, you can set up orbits with it, you can set up rendezvous. I think that's pretty much it. I think it does a couple other things, but that's really mainly what I use it for. And in this video, all the takeoffs and landings that I've done are actually manual. The only thing I used it for in this video was to set up the encounter with Duna and rendezvous all the pieces in space. For the whole series, I'll only use it for rendezvous. So now I think we're getting pretty close to being able to rendezvous with the Duna ferry. It's doing some final burns, I think, but we're almost there. So in another maybe minute or two, we'll be ready to go. And basically what I'm going to do is I will dock with it, which I'm not super great at, so this one took me a couple minutes to set up. All the footage is sped up to 4 times normal speed, so you don't have to sit here through like hours of gameplay. But yeah, once I get that set up, I'm just gonna have the fuel transfer to the Duna ferry, and I transferred the some of the RCS fuel too, which if you don't know what that is, it's basically what Like if you can see my, here we go, there's a Duna ferry. If you can see my ship right now in a second, it'll, yeah, it starts to turn, and then those little white jettisons of gas on the sides that are helping it turn, that's the RCS fuel. And it's pretty much essential that you have that, otherwise you could end up with a ship pretty much dead in space, where you can't really turn it and you can't do anything with it. Okay, so now we're here, we're traveling at the same speed, so to each other we look like we're not moving, we're just floating around in space. And I'm going to go ahead and set up the rendezvous. This I did manually. After I just used MechJeb to get me close enough where I could do this, and then I just did this manually. I think it actually does do this now for you if you want with the most recent update, but I decided to just do it myself. So that's pretty much it for this episode, guys. I hope you enjoyed it. As far as this mission goes, we're almost done with the tedious, boring parts. We just have to launch the final rocket, and then we'll pretty much be good to go for Duna. Thanks again, guys, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, leave a like and a comment down below. This is Chris from the Moral Pack, signing off.